Hey gamers, this is Ed Park, aka Taugrim, bringing you my Iron Fist tank PvP spec for the Vanguard and Powertech classes in Star Wars The Old Republic. This tank spec synergizes around our melee ability Stockstrike or Rocket Punch. With talents you get an increased crit chance of 30% and a crit strike damage bonus of 30%. The 15% crit strike increase from the 4-piece set stacks with the talents, so you get a total of 45% increased chance to crit, and this makes it very reliable. I've also taken the excellent gap closer and both 2% damage mitigation talents, which stack with the tanking cell damage mitigation to give you 9% mitigation against all damage attacks. And if you use your spammable 10-meter ability or your point-blank AoE ability, you can debuff your target's damage by an additional 4%. So basically, that all stacks up to 13% damage mitigation, and it makes a huge difference in terms of survivability. So as we open up combat, I use my pull, and with the spec, the pull has a 3-second root effect and burn down that player. You can stack your crit chance buff with a relic, and you go ahead and find a good spot to AoE multiple targets as we're trying to cover the flag carrier. Right there I get a crit with Stockstrike. You'll see that a lot with this spec. I have, with my current champion gear at Valor rank 56, over a 72% chance to crit with Stockstrike. And right there I peel for the friendly flag carrier with the pull into the fire, and I'm going to move past the flag carrier here. He's at high health, so I go ahead and I have guard on him. I move down, use my point blank AoE stun. I'm trying to clear a path for him, but unfortunately he gets CC'd in the fire and burned down. So after we res, I go ahead and put my guard on that healer. That combat medic turns out to be the only healer from our side in this same faction Hutball match, and we're trying again to score on the right catwalk. So I'm looking at the targets, trying to figure out which one is the best one to pull into the fire. I grab a near full health Sage here, pull him into the fire right as it starts up, and he's rooted for 3 seconds, and by the time the root effect wears off, he's pretty much done. As I'm closing the gap to the enemy flag carrier, I use taunt on an opposing player, and taunts are off the global cooldown, so you should use them liberally, whether you're tank or DPS spec, to add some protection for your friendly players. I get a nice crit Stockstrike for 2300 on this opposing Sage, and interrupt that channeled ability. It's a good idea to interrupt channeled abilities because if they start to cast again, basically when you cast a channeled ability, you pay the mana cost up front. And so if you interrupt them, force them to restart their channel, they're going to be burning through their resources. So I'm continuing to peel for the friendly flag carrier there. I pull another player into the acid. And right here I pop the point blank AoE accuracy debuff. It works most effectively against Imperial Agent Smugglers and Jedi Knights and Sith Warriors because those classes have a lot of melee and ranged attacks. The accuracy debuff does not work against force and tech attacks. So I find another good target here. I'm waiting for my pull to come off cooldown. Drag the player into the acid. Sometimes you'll notice in the video I take a step or so into the acid, and that's just to cause the player who is pulled to have to walk another second or two through the acid, and because the acid will tick for multiple times a second. I'm being opportunistic. Whenever I see low health targets, I try to switch over to them to burn the player down, and I can see on the platform there are about 4 enemy players and just 1 friendly player. So I go ahead and drop down, pick up the healing buff, come back, and I'm going to cover the friendly flag carrier. So the opposing players are clumped up here. I go ahead and use a mortar volley here. It's an excellent channeled ability. And even though I'm a melee spec tank, I do my best damage, up close and personal. Whenever there are opportunities to have multiple enemy players AoE, I go ahead and use it. Right there I'm using Pulse Cannon. I should have used my point blank AoE stun before channeling Pulse Cannon. And right there I help bury an enemy player with a crit Stockstrike and then drop him with an Ion Pulse. Now, I keep picking on this one player here. He's a low health commando, so I know he doesn't have much in the way of expertise. And right here, I'm on an enemy Sage. I interrupt this cast ability. He's trying to cast a heal, and now he's channeling. And the great thing about our melee interrupt with this spec is you can do it every 6 seconds. Melee interrupts are off the global cooldown, and they're fantastic for helping to shut down a healer. There's some folks in the forums who have said that they think that the talents to reduce the cooldown of the interrupt from 8 seconds to 2 seconds are a waste of talent points, but I totally disagree. It's incredible to be able to, lock down a cast time class using your interrupts. And a lot of times, if you are facing a player who's just spam nuking the same spell over and over, if you interrupt them, they'll sit there and try to keep activating it, and there'll be a delay before they realize, hey, I need to switch spells. Right there, you notice I switched to a low health target. That was a smuggler who was in cover. I don't know if it's a gunslinger, but it's important not to let the cast time nukers free cast, because they will blow people up, whether they're a mercenary, bounty hunter, gunslinger, or sniper, especially the tracer missile bounty hunters and the gunnery spec commandos, because you can limit their damage. So you can see I'm not bothering to attack anyone because I want to maintain my out of combat run speed buff. I don't want to engage until someone starts to attack me, and then I'm waiting for a player to get in the right position, charge up, use my point blank AoE stun. I anticipate the knockdown, pop my CC breaker immediately out of it, and I've got a full resolve bar so they can't CC me except for roots and snares, and by this point it's too late. I've crossed and managed a solo cap there. I come back to mid, get another nice crit there from Stockstrike for 2k. Because of the stacking talents, a 45% increased crit chance from the combination of the 30% from talents and the 15% from the combat tech set, it offers really reliable burst on a pretty short cooldown, 9 seconds and less if it resets. I go ahead and interrupt that player and then drop that player with another crit Stockstrike, and use my charge ability to go ahead and get back up to these players, come up, drop my point blank AoE. And the good thing about having so much mitigation, it gives you a lot of uptime. Here I'm taking a lot of damage and receiving only a little bit of trickle healing, but it buys me enough time to get the run speed buff, and I go ahead and do a drive-by pass to this friendly player who was in a great position to receive it, and he goes ahead and runs in for our 5th score in this match. When you consider all of the mechanics of my Iron Fist tank spec, it's very well rounded. It has good damage, good survivability, good mobility, and good crowd control. In this pug match, I put up 220-odd thousand damage and was second in kills and led the match with 20 killing blows, and that speaks to the burst damage capabilities of the class. I also had over 41,000 protection, but if I'd been more disciplined about using my off the global cooldown taunts, that number would have been much higher. This is the favorite spec that I've tried so far at 50. It's the most well-rounded. It's great for beating up players, whether you're solo, pugging war zones, or in group play. This spec really excels because you can guard friendlies while still putting meaningful pressure on your enemy players. If you're looking for more information, check out my Vanguard and Powertech PvP guide. The link is in the description for this video, and you can catch me streaming live PvP with narration on Twitch. Let me know what you think of this video. Take care.